May I have your conference ID?
Because they're no longer active, but you can still see things like the alarm history and metric information if those things are available for that alarm. The other thing that's changed slightly with the historical alarms, and I'll show you a picture in a second, is the export to CSV has changed slightly to reflect this. So in 7.6 we had the ability to export historical alarms as well as live alarms, and we've merged those two things together. So when you do an export of alarms, it shows you all of the alarms that you can see based on your current filters, so you get your historical and active alarms in line. So this is just a quick screenshot of what these historical alarms look like. To activate them, you just go to your Actions menu and say Show Historical, and then you can go and hide historical as well if you don't want to see those historical alarms anymore. All of the filtering and selection and categorization through the chart at the top works just the same on historical alarms as it does on active alarms, with the addition of you can now provide filters on who acknowledged an alarm or the time that an alarm was acknowledged. So you can get a breakdown at the top of who's been acknowledging which alarms, and then find out, you could do a filter to see, I want to see all of the alarms that were acknowledged by administrator or any particular user. Are there any questions about the historical alarms?
If you would like to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1. And there are no questions.
The gray part is on the screen here. You can see the top 2 alarms and the bottom alarm are gray, so the whole alarm is gray. This isn't the status of the alarm, it's just a background rendering of the alarm, because the alarm still has a status. It's not dead. It represents the last known severity of the alarm. And then through the history you can see the life cycle of the alarm history as opposed to the historical alarms. Okay, I think that's it for me. If you have any other questions, you can ask them in chat, and I'll do my best to answer. So is the capability being worked on for historical alarms to be exported based on specific attributes? The CSV export now, it shows you your active view. So if you'd like to export a set of alarms based on origin, then you filter to that origin and hit the export. So you can apply as rich a set of filters as you can in the UI.
In the interest of time, let me jump in here, and you can continue asking questions of Tim via the chat window. My name is Robert Vacanti. I'm also a product manager in the Nimsoft group, now known as UIM. I'm going to be talking about 2 features, about SSO and SAML, and then about our new reporting capabilities. First of all, SSO and SAML. This is a new capability that we've got that has just been added in 8.0. And what SAML is a method for doing, SSO and SAML is for doing single sign-on. So rather than if you have an infrastructure where when you sign into one application, you've effectively signed into them all, this allows you to participate in that with the Nimsoft solution, assuming that it is a SAML-based solution. So here's a little information about SAML being an XML-based communication mechanism, standing for Security Assertion Markup Language. And as I mentioned, it eliminates need for separate credentials and should reduce the IT administration, because once this is hooked up, you have one set of credentials to manage for all users rather than having credentials to be used for each user, for each application. A couple caveats. Obviously, we're not including a SAML identity solution specifically, or an identity provider with our with this version of UIM or any. So what we've done thus far is tested this very heavily with the CA SiteMinder product. It is SAML compliant, so we expect that this will work properly, and we are currently in tests with other identity providers as well. But right now, the only one that we are officially supporting is SiteMinder. Now, if you do specifically have in one of your environments a different identity provider, we would be very happy to work with you in order to make sure that that works. We're interested in trying to get it to work with as many providers as we can, but right now, in the interest of getting this released, if everything complies with the standard, our expectation is that it will work, but we released only using CA SiteMinder at the time being. One other thing worth noting is that single sign-on is for the user experience in UMP, but isn't something that is yet supported in either Admin Console or Unified Reporter. We're working on both of those. Admin Console, I suspect, will come first, and Unified Reporter will come after that. At that point, we will have a complete solution for the management of identity throughout the entire product. So I wanted to show is just briefly how SSO and SAML work, or how SSO works with SAML. In this case, if this build works, the user has to, in advance, and the administrator will have had to have set up that user on the identity provider, and that is the one single place where all identity then lives. As a second step, now the user attempts to access a service, which in this case would be the unified monitoring. When the user attempts to make that access, the service makes an authentication request back to the identity provider over to the left. And if this will advance, the identity provider validates that user and passes an authentication token back, allowing access. Now, if the user had already previously logged in, it would pass along that identity in step 3. It would already recognize that. It would not be prompted for a password, and the user would just be granted, or that application would be granted that permission automatically. So one step once at the beginning of a user session, and then they won't need to sign in again. What I'm showing here is that when a user then accesses via a second federated service, they're granted that access without any additional login. So a pretty common workflow for anybody that's familiar with single sign-on. So what I wanted to show is right now the way this is integrated is slightly different and something that needs to be clarified. So when you go in to log in via UMP, you'll see here that on the left side we've got the standard sign-in. If you want to log in using SAML in this case, for single sign-in you need to use the sign-in button that's in the upper right-hand corner. Now, this is something we're investigating, how to unify this and make an intelligent decision. But at the moment, if logging in from the left one, you're going to be using the standard credentials that you've always used for the Nimsoft product. It's only on the right that you'll be using SSO and SAML, assuming that that has all been configured. In my deck for the longer presentation, because this has been condensed in the interest of time, I have a bunch of steps and can discuss how to install SSO and SAML. We have that very well documented, and it's something that's already linked to in the standard documentation as to how to do that. But if you have any additional questions, please contact me or our support organization for how to get that installed. Note, here's what ends up happening when you click on that button that I was talking about earlier. You are transparently routed over to the authentication login screen from the identity provider. So in this case, because it's CA in both cases, it looks surprisingly familiar because it's got the logo in approximately the same placement on both applications. But when you do click on this, the screen that follows is not one that's being provided by our solution. It's being provided by that identity provider. And so after then you hit login, it goes back to working inside of the whatever the application is, in this case UIM. So if you have any questions, please type those in the chat. Because I'm keeping track of the time on the clock, I'm not going to answer those now. I'll answer them as soon as I finish my presentation and pass the ball on to the next presenter. The other thing that we've added, and another thing we've added in this area, are 2 additional reports. And these are our top-end and at-a-glance reports, something that, if you're familiar with our eHealth solution, are reports that are very similar to those. The top-end report is something that is used to identify problems in your environment. It's meant to be a troubleshooting tool, effectively saying what are the top systems that have a metric that is exceeding some value, or that are using most CPU, or disks are closest to being empty. So it's fundamentally going to take a small number of devices, or a small number of things that metrics have been gathered for, show those in a list, prioritized by which have the most severe problems relative to a given metric. The at-a-glance report, a second one that we've added, is one that's supposed to give you an overview of the health of a given device. So when you use this, you'll be able to see a number of different metrics that we believe are the most pertinent ones for you to be monitoring for a type of device. Now do note there are 2 different at-a-glance reports actually behind this. One of them is network-oriented, and one of them is server-oriented. And the information that's being shown on those is slightly different between the 2 of those. I'll show you those in an example in a second. The one thing worth noting is that the way that you initiate these reports is different than it has historically been. So rather than having to go in the unified reporter or using the standard mechanisms for accessing the report, we've made it something that is contextual and more easily accessed from within USM. So to that end, here is the method for accessing those in USM. Note that there's now a reports button that wasn't there previously. The reports button, when it drops down, has a list of the reports that are contextually make sense. So in this case, I have a group selected. The top end report obviously has to pull from a group because it's going to be utilizing multiple devices. In this case, we click on the reports, top end report drops down, we make that selection. If you are selecting only a single element, in that case the at a glance is the report that you'd see in this place. You'd get different reports depending on what you chose. After that's selected, you're given note that this is showing this after a selection has been made and after the parameters have been set. When this is first brought up, you won't see the report, of course, on the right. So this is what we get when we're trying to configure the top-end report. It's asking us for configuration parameters. First and foremost, we've been provided with the name of the group that we'll be using because we selected that in context back in USM. When we go on, then we have to go on and say how many devices do we care about. In this case, I said I wanted to have 10. Asked what the time frame is so we can determine over what time period is this relevant. We've got day, week, month, 2 weeks, we've last 90 days. There are several different time frames that you can select in there. The metric type, this metric type is a large dropdown, and you can pick this on any metric that's being collected within that group. So you'll get a very long list of all metrics that are being collected. You select that metric. You do have the ability to add additional filters. So if you were looking for something where in this case, the CPU usage was very high, but only when it was a device that also had very high disk usage, you could add a filter. Again, ultimately when you hit add a filter, what you're presented with is another opportunity to choose a metric type and then what the threshold needs to be in order to be included in the report. So the one thing worth noting here is that obviously if you say you want a top 10 for your top end report and only 5 of those meet the criteria that's set in the filter, you're only going to get a list of 5. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get all 10. So that's the top end report. When you hit run, you see the report that's on the right. That's something that's available as I didn't mention the output format. In this case, this is being output as a PDF. So you can output it that way. We also have the ability to export this to an Excel file. So if you want to manipulate it further and you've got a very large number of top ends, you can look at it that way as well. The next page is just a larger review of the same report to give you a sense of what the type of information that we're showing. In this case, I've selected CPU report for the last day, and here are all the systems that met the criteria that was established, showing the minimum, the maximum, and the average. On the at-a-glance report, here is an at-a-glance report. The selection criteria is very much the same. I'd already selected a computer system name when I made the screenshot, again saying the time frame and the system type. The system type is defaulted automatically to the type of system that was selected when you right-click or when you selected it from within USM. But it can be changed if for some reason you want to have networking-based information. It's not likely that you'll have all the characteristics and all the metrics gathered that you would need, but if necessary, you could switch this. And then again, we have the output format. Here's a larger version of that. Now note, down in the lower left-hand corner, I intentionally left off one metric that I didn't have. So there are a set of metrics that need to be gathered in order for this report to work. And specifically, these are all being gathered by the SNMP collector. So in the documentation, we list specifically for at a glance which metrics need to be gathered in order for this report to be complete. Now, if you choose either of the reports that I've already discussed and don't have the metrics that are necessary, what you get is effectively a blank report that notes you have not collected the metrics that are necessary in order to complete this report. In this case, we've collected 5 of the 6 that we expected for the server report, but note that we don't have disk faults collected for this specific server. So note that we have what is effectively a blank graph here, and that'll happen when you've got some of the information that you have not collected. So now here I said again, from a setup standpoint, you do need to have Unified Reporter installed. Despite the fact we're not accessing it directly from UR, Unified Reporter is being used in the background in order to be able to generate these reports. And then the specific metrics that need to be collected for the at-a-glance report are listed in the documentation, and something that without collection, you'll get this document or this report that's shown here that's just showing that no server metrics are available so that we can't populate it. This still is being generated in a PDF format because that was what was requested, but ultimately this is an empty report. And with that, I will turn the mic over to Jim Cook. I will look in the chat to see if there are any questions. If you have any other questions that you think of after this, please take the opportunity to email me. We'll answer the questions as best we can or help you via our support organization. And with that, I turn this over to Jim. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Jim Cook, Product Manager for the Core Services team here in Fort Collins. So I'll be covering a little bit of what's new here with Discovery, the automatic deployment engine, and some usage metering and billing up here. So there we go. Okay. So first I want to, with Discovery, we've added several new things. We don't have time to go into all of them here, but I do want to cover the seed device discovery. Is a new feature that was added. It's accessed through the Discovery wizard. And what it does is it gives you the benefit that you don't need to enter a whole bunch of different IP ranges now. If you select, like, it has a LAN option down there when you pick your seed device, it will just go off and find all the local subnets and collect that from each other. You have an option not to use the local LANs on that, and you can still have Discovery scopes configured for the range of where the seed router, propagating out from what it finds and the next one it finds can still be limited here. And it does give you an accelerated discovery capability because it's prioritizing now based on other devices found that are already connected to the seed device. So it kind of walks out that direction. So we got a seed discovery. Clicking and it's not going there. Here we go. One limitation on this right now is that it does require, it must be with SNMP. So it doesn't do a seed router discovery based on WMI or SSH. So you have to have an SNMP credentials defined. If the LAN option is selected, you should also find other authentication protocols, because it's not just going off looking at routers and switches. It's going to find all the systems out there. So as it's finding other servers out there, then it can use for the other things that it finds, the WMI or SSH to do it. So to get a complete scope and inventory of everything that it finds from there, you want to have the other credentials defined as well. One little caveat is that the LAN option is not selected and you have no range scopes or defined, then basically the only thing that's going to happen is it's going to define the seed device and nothing else. So it's, you probably for most part want to keep it with the LANs, or you're going to want to define your range scope so it knows where to stop and has boundaries associated with it. Okay. The other thing that we've added is we are doing now SNMP ARP discovery, and so this is allowing us to, it's kind of we've added a whole bunch of new phases to the discovery, right? So you can actually see those during the discovery wizard that it's going through different things. And one of them is this using the ARP tables to find all these devices, the MAC addresses get populated from this, even if they weren't found from other discovery protocols. One thing I wanted to bring up in context of this is that on some older devices, when you are querying extremely large ARP tables, it's been known historically that can bog down the device, or cause it to take a long time. In the interim, until we put in other mechanisms to mitigate that for those devices, or some automation around that, we did put in a switch in here where you can exclude, where you have a device that has very, very large ARP tables, you can exclude that IP address so that you're using raw config so it'll avoid it and not cause a performance impact when doing that. Okay. Now I'm going to move on.
Jim, sorry to interrupt you. Your slides do not appear to be advancing on the WebEx. So a quick heads up there.
Well, that's interesting.
There you go.
Okay. You should be seeing slide 37 about the hub and robot.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I wanted to give a little bit of a, we've been working on the hub and robot for quite a while. It's been kind of a journey through the 7X stuff. I want to give you kind of an overview of what's been going on with that. Right now, we're with the 7.61, we're in, looking to be in really, really good shape, which is what's shipping with the 8.0 product. One of the big improvements has been around the message spooling. So both inbound and outbound processing is now multi-threaded. So it can handle much higher throughputs per queue and a higher number of queues at fixed rates. We also have implemented smarter disk file handling, so that in the past some of these disk files could get very, very large for these queues, and now we chunk it up so that it's easier to handle them, improves the startup time, and the overall throughput and stability of dealing with those large files. And just as a reference, this has gained us significant improvements in a number of cases, as you can look at the tables here. To see that this has been a well worthwhile endeavor to improve our spooling and our capability there. So we'll give you a chance to look at that. You can look at the other slide. The other thing that we worked on was our tunnel SSL connections. In the past, every time there was messages going through the tunnel, it would establish a handshaking, get the overhead of establishing the SSL encryption and stuff to deal with that. And so there's a lot of overhead. And what we've done now is we keep basically like a pool of persistent connections there, such that we don't have that huge amount of overhead any longer. And so that when the messages come in, they can actually kind of use the same connection and tunnel as that was there before, making it much more efficient with much less overhead. So the performance goes up quite a bit in dealing with these tunnel connections. It's a more generic approach. It's a much more stable algorithm in dealing with fewer communication failures, because you're not constantly starting up and starting so many different connections. We've been able to use some intelligence around how many tunnel sessions are needed based on your the capacity of the systems in place. Because we're not constantly starting things up and starting them, we have a lot less leakage. So it's a much more performant solution now with tunnels, SSL connections using tunnels. Another change that we did is having to do with when we have failover considerations. So if you have a primary hub and a secondary hub, and there's a failover, so a robot moves from from the hub with origin A, and during the failover it connects to the secondary hub, which happen to have a different origin on it. Well, in the past, the robot was switching, and then all the clause data and the things associated with that were causing a problem. So now, in the case of a failover, it's smart enough to know that, and it retains its origin, so you don't have any discontinuity of data in that case. Okay. Now, it's a little bit different from a failover from when you explicitly rename. So when you do rename the hub origin, or it's changed, and you have robots attached to it that are configured to inherit that origin. Wow, that was bad static. So when you do a rename, and those robots, will automatically, get changed, and if the origin on the robot then is changed due to the inheritance, all its probes will now be restarted to pick up that change. There were some inconsistencies in the past that have been fixed by this paradigm. So this should make all of our data, handle the failover, handle the renames in a more consistent manner. Okay, now we go on to the ADE, Automatic Deployment Engine. And we've had ADE out there for a little bit in deploying robots and hubs from USM. And what's really new is that we're now including ADE in Admin Console to do all your probe deployments. And it's a redesign. It's a Java-based redesign of what we used to do with distserv. It was designed with scalability and flexibility intent. It is much greater performance than you had with distserv. It works with multi-threaded environments. It uses an archive cache to do quick package lookups and file extraction, so the files are already extracted. So like with distserv, it had to kind of redo it every time and do the extract. So we have some efficiencies that way. The archive sync solution is much more scalable than distserv's package forwarding that we had. Processing in a distributed is throughout the environment rather than through a single master distserv, propagating things out. So things just happen massively in parallel with ADE. Another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, because a lot of people are still using IM in context and also admin console, is that the archives, ADE keeps in sync with any changes to the archive. You can have many different local archives. And so if you physically deleted a file from the archive, ADE picks that up without needing a restart. However, distserv has always had that behavior that if something changes, it doesn't know it. It has everything cached, so it would have to restart. So just be aware of that when you're seeing some differences there if you're using multiple tools. As noted, admin console is now using ADE for all the packages, okay? IM, infrastructure manager, is still using distserv, okay? So you're not going to get the performance improvements and the big bang for the buck with IM. It's only coming with admin console. You'll notice that, so when you do if you select a bunch of different, packages or probes that you want to deploy, and you select a whole bunch of different robots out there, those things are going to happen in parallel and is much faster. And you'll notice that from admin console, when you do a deployment, that when you go to the distribution activity, you will see a lot of things happening independently, asynchronously. So you'll see some things finishing before others, which was not the case with distserv underneath. So this is a huge performance improvement using ADE. I also wanted to introduce, a number of you are using automation, that you have scripts and things built around distserv. And we are enabling you to have a white paper available that shows the differences on how you can transition to use ADE and get all the performance impacts of it. It does a functional comparison of what you had in distserv, what you have in ADE, the different callbacks that you would use. So it's a very nice white paper that's available to explain the difference, and you can actually get started on that now in 8.0. There is further improvements coming to ADE in the way of our archive management and the GUIs to configure that, but most all the APIs and stuff are there for that. Okay. So ADE is compatible, does have some backward compatibility. So ADE for automation, this is important that I'm making note here. This is for the automation part. So if you're doing scripting and you're wanting to do this, you can use ADE all the way back onto 7.0 through 8.0, providing that you do have the latest Java JRE. Okay, and so again, that's just for the programmatic and SDK uses of that. When you're using admin console, because of the other dependencies, of course, that you need 8.0 to go with ADE version 2.0. That's the compatibility with that. So if you're going to be doing it through the UI or with the UMP and admin console, then to get these benefits, 8.0 and ADE version 2.0 go together. You can't get that backward compatibility, only for the scripting. All right, another big change coming is with our usage metering and billing. And this is a process change that we're going to be rolling out this next quarter. It really is an impact for all customers to ease their fulfillment obligations to CA. So this impacts min commit customers, subscription-based customers, and sometimes on those contract renewal times, CA requests that you run the usage metering probe to generate a billing report, basically to assess what your usage has been. So we've streamlined the process for this. It's a two-phase rollout that we're doing. In 8.0, we're eliminating all the various email exchanges and the manual running of the probes in their environment. Okay, so it's just automating this, providing the connectivity so that we can get these reports automatically delivered on your behalf to CA. In phase 2, which we're actively working on, is I know it's a pain point for a lot of people, but is enhancing the usage data that we collect, like for instance storage probes. Right now we're not assessing those by the unit of measure as they're licensed. As you're probably aware that they're licensed by terabytes, but we're actually reporting by servers now, so that's not the correct usage. So we're going to be fixing that in phase 2 and improving the performance and the way that you configure the usage billing probes. So that's coming in phase 2. We are going to be sending out a detailed step-by-step document to all the customers. It'll include a unique customer ID that you enter when you're configuring the probes. Now this is important because this UMB process is an opt-in requirement to it. It's not shipped with the standard product. You actually have to explicitly download the probes to do this. And then as part of configuring the new versions of you've got a new version of the usage probe and the metering probe, the usage metering and the billing probe. But there's a third probe called the Web Gateway probe. And the Web Gateway is what you have to opt into. And that's what allows it to transport the billing reports to a CA via secured web channel. The automated report generation, it will store the reports locally. So if there was a significant objection to sending your reports through the secure channel to the CA backend, then you can still opt in, say you want to opt out of the transport but manually mail your reports. Okay. And we go into, I thought I had a screenshot coming up here of the Web Gateway probe. But it's fully documented on how we do this. The probes, it's going to run at 2 a.m. on every week plus the first day of the month. This compatibility matrix that the Web Gateway probe requires a PPM version so that it has all the correct configuration capabilities. This is a screenshot of the opt-in so that you must accept the terms of use, saying that we will use this as a transport. But in your customer ID, company name, and email address as part of the header of the report, so that CA can contact you to discuss that report with you. Okay, so now I will transfer this over and to Kurt Spence, and I will look at the questions that were entered in the log. Take it away, Kurt.
Okay, thank you, Jim. So hi everybody, this is Kurt Spence. Product manager here also with the new UIM product, newly named UIM product, working specifically in some of the areas of core monitoring, some of the new analytics pieces that we're working on here within the product as well. So there's two, and also some of the data management areas. So there's two themes that I want to talk about with you today. The first is a new alarm threshold capability. Time to threshold, which is a predictive alarm, and I'll talk a little bit about how that works. And then my second topic will be just a brief introduction to some new capability for Oracle users within our data engine. So without any further ado, let me move forward here. So for time to threshold, again, we're looking at this being a simple, basic predictive alarm. And so here's a sample scenario that you might consider. So maybe you have a critical server, maybe it's a database server, and you know that you're always very keen to track its disk capacity. So today with our CDM probe, you of course can track that, report on that, create thresholds around, say, disk usage, et cetera, as kind of a real-time tracking. So our product, of course, is very solid and gives you that real-time view. But what if you wanted to be alerted? What if you wanted to have some kind of predictive capability to say, tell me, I'd like to know in advance of a threshold. So maybe I've set standard thresholds at 80%, let's say for my C drive, But could the product tell me, for example, I'd like to know 10 days in advance when my C drive will reach an 80% capacity on the I listed a specific QoS from CDM there. So what we've done here, let me progress to the next slide. I've got just a quick sketch here of kind of what we've done internally within the UIM product for being able to do a predictive alarm. And then I'll show you some screenshots about how to simply set this up. So we have a new UIM component called the prediction engine. So it will run on any of the hubs in your infrastructure, and you'll see that in 8.0 as a new infrastructure component now. So for the configured alarms, it's going to be maintaining this local regression file. So you'll see to the right hand of my slide in that light colored box, and again I'll show you some screenshots in a minute. Time to threshold configuration, alert me when the QoS disk usage percentage metric is within 10 days of 80%. So that's what I've configured. I'll show you in a minute how that works. So the prediction engine is basically watching that QoS and building a local regression file. You'll see down here in the lower left-hand corner, every hour it's rolling up and doing statistical mean values for that and building the points, maintaining the points of a linear regression line. And we're using a standard Apache library for doing our linear regression then. So essentially what we'll do is we'll build a brand new QoS. You'll see in the light colored box there toward the bottom. So we have a new derived QoS. In this case, it's the name of the QoS will actually explain essentially what it is. So we take the original metric name clause disk usage percent days, and then we attach 280 in this case, so 280%. So now the clause sort of defines what it is. That's published to the database, could be reported on just like any other QoS. It will be published to the bus. Our baselining and threshold engineering, which we introduced several releases ago for dynamic thresholding, will now pick up this same QoS just like anything else and start watching for the time to range to now hit the, in this case, limit of 10 days. So you'll see at the very bottom, you'll see the time window, number of days. So every hour when this new derived QoS is defined, or excuse me, is computed, then the prediction engine will basically check now, okay, you know, what is our days out to the 80% in this case, and is it now within the threshold, is what the baseline engine will be checking for, is are we within the, say, in the 10 days in this case. So that's how the various engines within UIM are going to work together to accomplish this basic prediction. So the way you'll configure that, here's again just showing you CDM, and just as a side note, the time to threshold will be with 8.0 is available with most all of the web configurations for our probes. So the configuration window is available through the admin console. So if you go to the admin console and pull up most any of the web configurations, you can check the release notes. I believe we document there's a handful of probes that we are still working on support for, but most all of the admin console probe configurations will have this new capability, which I show with the arrow at the bottom. So again, here's my QoS disk usage percentage. I've checked to publish the data. You'll see some of the other information here. I won't steal Jim Perkins' thunders. He's going to talk in a minute about the time over threshold block there. But if you look at the bottom now where that arrow is pointing, you'll see a new block there as well called predictive alarm. And you'll also see we've got a help bubble there, the question mark, so you can get a little bit of quick information about that, as well as information that we'll document in our product docs. But let me go forward and show you what the next screen looks like. Essentially, if you click that predictive alarm, you're going to see that this new block shows up. I just snipped out the specific block itself from that entire configuration window. And now you'll see new settings, time to threshold alarm underneath predictive. And here's where you'll set kind of what I explained a moment ago. You'll say how many, in this case it's 10, and I'll select my units. You can either select days or hours. The prediction value, and again, the prediction value will match what the QoS type is. So in this case, 80 will match the units. It's 80%. If I was looking at potentially the disk utilization instead in megabytes, then the prediction value would be a megabyte. So it all matches just the way you would expect within setting these QoS. And then the alarm severity, so you can pick 1 through 5 of our standard alarms that we support within the UIM alarm thresholds. So in this case, just left it at an informational alarm. So here's an example. I've kind of changed, the screenshot I took here was from a system that had been running a slightly different QoS metric, just to make sure you know what you're looking at. But if you look down here at the gray box at the bottom, I'm actually showing again what Tim showed with the historical alarms here. So I pulled up a historical alarm from a test system. One thing you'll notice, you'll see here Analytics Demo 2 is the name of the system, and right next to it, it says Predictive Threshold. That's the subsystem ID for the alarm. So these alarms will have a new unique subsystem ID called Predictive Threshold. That way you could easily find them, filter on them, create rules around them, things like that. So you can easily find and use these additional new alarms coming in. And then you'll see the main text kind of in the middle of that gray box. In this case, we had set a test system actually looking for 7 days within 40% just to create a very rapid test to be able to generate this alarm quickly. But it's the same concept. So you'll see here the target of C drive was within 7 days of reaching the 40%. So again, coming into your standard alarming system now. This is just another quick example. Like I said, the only reason I put this chart in here, and again, just to make sure it was clear, this was a 7 day to 40% scenario, just a different setting on the threshold. But the idea is that you can see that I've actually charted on this quick PRD report both the base clause itself, the percentage value, as well as the predictive. So you could start to create overlays if you want to, things like that within the tracking of this. So just a simple example of showing this the actual derived clause in a PRD report here. Okay, so that's just a quick look at that. Like I said, we've got all the documentation for how this works for all of the admin console-based probes that are supported with it. And so I'll jump to the Q&A window here in a moment and see if any questions came up around this feature. But what I will do, just while I'm on the line here, cover one more topic, which is related to Oracle. So for 8.0, kind of the main summary of this is with 8.0, we now support database maintenance and index maintenance within Oracle. So with last year, we increased our support and beefed up our support for the Microsoft database for index maintenance, table maintenance. And so now with 8.0, we're looking to reach the same capability now within Oracle. So just have a little bit of quick text here. And again, before I kind of go through a few of these bullets, again, please read the documentation on this and consult your DBAs if you're in an Oracle shop. Just to understand, again, with Oracle and the way that database technology works, if partitioning is the right choice, if this is something that you want to utilize, and if so, then those are settings on the data engine. So just like you would have seen with the Microsoft data engine settings for for index and table maintenance, they'll now show up for Oracle. But just a few points here. The partitioning is based on timestamps. It can obviously increase the speed of the database itself. Again, you'll want to work with your database administrators to understand based on your characteristics if this is the right choice. Partitioning and daily partition maintenance is done both online and offline with Oracle. I'll mention that. So if you, depending on the edition of Oracle you're using, will determine whether you can do partitioning online, meaning while the database is still accessible to the data engine, or if it would need to be in an offline mode. So again, you'll need to consult your DBA with Oracle to understand the edition that you're running as to whether or not index maintenance can be done online versus offline. And via Oracle, there is some self-healing capabilities that we can take advantage of to be able to fix any failures going forward. So just a quick summary there. Like I said, from a feature capability, it's a fairly compact feature, but there's a lot from a database side that if you're an Oracle shop, you'll want to talk with your DBAs and just understand if it's the right thing. Please check out the documentation on it as well to find out any more information that we've got in our docs. before going forward. But it is available now for those folks that want to use that. Okay, so I think I'll now pass this over to Jim Perkins. Just a second, let me find him in the list. There we go.
I'm assuming you can hear me, even though I haven't quite got the ball yet. So
yeah, Jim, and I think I just might have moved it to you. Do you have presenter now?
Look like I do.
Great.
Thanks. Hello, my name is Jim Perkins, and I'm a product manager on the event team here on the Unified Infrastructure Monitor project. Today I'm going to be talking to you about time over threshold. But first, let's look at what time over threshold is. In this graph here, looks like it hit my red line for some reason. In this graph here, you will see a yellow line, which is a measured metric, and it somehow got dropped, but there's a red line which should be going across the screen right there next to the word threshold. So if you could imagine a straight red line going from left to right, right there next to the word threshold, you would know where the threshold is. So in this sample, the conditions are met for a time over threshold rule because the metric is over the threshold for a total of 20 minutes within a 60-minute sliding window. So if we had a rule for time over threshold that was set to 20 minutes or less, then the rule would be satisfied and an alarm would be raised. However, if the rule is defined to wait for the threshold to be exceeded for 25 minutes during a 60-minute window, then the rule would not be satisfied and an alarm would not be raised. To put it simply, the time over threshold rule is designed to raise an alarm only if the metric is too wrong for too long. Let's take a moment to look at the time over threshold process flow. On the left over here, you would see a probe, and the probe will send a QoS message or a quasi-metric message to the baseline engine. And the baseline engine then evaluates that metric value and compares it to the defined thresholds. And if it exceeds one of those thresholds, then an uncooked alarm or a raw alarm will be sent to the alarm enrichment engine, which will then evaluate the time over threshold rule and determine if the threshold has been exceeded based on the configured values of time over threshold. If it is exceeded, an alarm will be raised and it will be sent to the NAS probe, which will then put the alarm into the alarm tables where they can be seen by the user. If we look in the configuration for a probe, and time over threshold is available on any probe where the baseline engine block is also enabled. And you'll see here on this screen at the top we have I've defined a dynamic threshold block, and below that we have enabled the dynamic time over threshold. And let me kind of zoom in so you can see some more detail over time over threshold. So in this case, we've decided to say that if the time over threshold is exceeded for 15 minutes in a 60-minute window, then raise an alarm. And we also have a feature where we can automatically clear the alarm. And in that case, we say we want to wait 30 minutes. So if no threshold is exceeded for 30 minutes, then automatically clear the alarm. But we could disable that, which means the alarm would remain raised until acknowledged or cleared by the user. So let me just summarize what we have here with time over threshold. The time over threshold rule is designed to suppress transient threshold crossings, and it will only raise an alarm when a metric has been too wrong for too long. It is supported by any probe that has a baseline threshold block today, which is a vast majority of them. And then it requires alarm enrichment probe to be running in order for it to be configured. And this is only available in NMS 8.0. It will not be available in Snap until sometime in the future. So that's all I had. And so next up is Dan Burke, and he's going to talk to us about CA World. So Dan, you should have control now.
Okay, thank you very much. And can you guys just confirm you see a CA World slide and you can hear me okay?
Confirmed.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Dan Burke. I'm part of the Infrastructure Management Product Marketing team here at CA. I'm responsible for the former Nimsoft product, now CA Unified Infrastructure Management. I wanted to just take a couple minutes to give you a preview of the infrastructure management content for CA World, the CA customer event that we hold in Las Vegas. And this year it's in November 9th through November 12th. So if any of you have not had a chance to check out the content and or the calendar and agenda for CA World, I've got a quick overview for you here in terms of what we will be delivering during the session. It's a jam-packed, 3.5 days of both technical content, product content, and thought leadership content. Wanted to take a couple moments to fill you in on, stuff that would be appropriate for this particular audience today. On Sunday, November 9th, we will be having what we call our pre-con ed or pre-conference education. And during that time, we will have actually many of the same folks that we're presenting today on site in Las Vegas to walk some of you through, the overview of CA-UIM, or formerly Nimsoft. You're really from a 101 level, if you will, with some training as well into the 8.0 features and functions at a high level that we talked about today. The pre-conference education is really a great way for an attendee, if you're not hands-on with the solution day-to-day, to get a decent feel for the solution so that the rest of the conference makes sense to you as you listen to other customers present and or attend any of our lab sessions or demo sessions. So again, that's the pre-con ed component on Sunday. Excuse me. Monday is really more of the CA corporate content. This is a great full day of both informative information about CA's direction, the infrastructure management, and other cross product solutions that are coming to market. And then you'll see our keynote speaker this year is Magic Johnson, which will take place in the evening, and then the welcome reception during the evening. As we move into Tuesday and Wednesday, that's when you'll start to get into more of the specific product tracks. So we have a number of sessions that will be hosted by current Nimsoft customers or UIM customers that will get up on stage and tell their story. These abstracts and titles are published on the CA website, which I'll point you to in a minute. But what I can tell you is that, there is a great representation of Nimsoft content here. We've got some enterprise customers or standard corporate IT folks that will be presenting for us, as well as managed service providers that will get up and tell their story as to how they are using the product effectively. And I would like to point out, even if you are not a managed service provider, or if you are a managed service provider, and you might not think that the enterprise content is appropriate, I can tell you that it absolutely will be. These sessions will, focus really on the product as well as the business side and the commercial value to the things that these organizations are doing. But please don't limit yourself to thinking that if you're an MSP, you only want to see MSP content, as all the content should be interesting for you. Additionally, through these several days, there are going to be what we call hands-on labs. These will be breakout sessions with the infrastructure management product management team. These are opportunities for you to get your hands dirty with 8.0, and really, ask questions directly to the product folks as well during these what we call hands-on labs. Again, all this information is available online. Wanted to give you a quick idea of what CA World will look and feel like. We've changed the way the floor or the event layout will work this year. You'll see the show floor up on the top right is really a great place for you to interact with your CA counterparts as well as each other. And we really want to keep you all together and interacting with the product teams and with each other. The large keynote area on the right is where the big sessions will take place, Magic Johnson, et cetera. And then we also have our executive center and our networking centers as well as some areas for you to meet with each other again and or other colleagues on the CA side. All right, the Opscenter. So the Opscenter is really a new label for a series of products and team members here at CA Technologies. And this particular group of technologies and support personnel are really focused on the three areas you see there to the left. Infrastructure management, obviously being where CA Nimsoft Monitor or UIM fits in. That's the series of products designed for managing the health and performance and availability of infrastructure within your network. You'll also notice that application performance management, or APM, is also within the Opscenter family as well, as it's very complementary to the infrastructure management discipline. And then also enterprise mobility management fits into this Opscenter category as well, as mobility and everything mobile in terms of management also will fall into this family of product. So this is where the Nimsoft training and or labs will take place within the Opscenter portion of the floor, and that's where we hopefully get to meet and spend some time with each of you that decide to attend. Okay, to give you a little more detail in terms of the products that fit into these particular families here, this is a bit of an eye chart, but if you give a quick scan down the list, obviously CA Nimsoft Monitor is in the infrastructure management list, as well as the freemium version of Snap. Notice we are using the former product names within this slide. You will start to see the new branding tomorrow pretty much everywhere within CA Technologies content. But if you were curious as to what other products will be in the Opscenter, you can see them in this list. And again, these will be easily accessible to you to learn more about and or take a closer look at within the Opscenter portion of the floor. In terms of some representative customer speakers for the Opscenter, you can see some different company logos here that will be presenting on behalf of the Opscenter product line. This list may expand here between now and the actual event, but we've got some great marquee customers here that have some larger brand recognition to your average consumer. But then there's also some real powerhouse IT shops here in this list that are making great use of our technology. And again, we're excited to have each of these folks present to us in November. All right. My final slide here is just a quick resources tab for you. If you Google CA World 2014, you will find this page very easily, or you can follow that hyperlink there that I've provided as well. When you access this particular page, there will be a small box in the upper left-hand corner that will tell you, about the show. It'll allow you to sort and filter your agenda by track, so you can really start to decide what sessions are of interest to you. And then additionally at the top, you can click to register now, where you can navigate through the registration process to get yourself ready to attend the show in Las Vegas. Please, feel free to let Melissa or myself know if you have any additional questions. That's what we're here for. I'm going to pass the mic back to Melissa at this point, and if you have any questions, again, feel free to use the Q&A function within the WebEx Meeting Manager. Well, Melissa, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. That was a great presentation on CA World. We appreciate that, and thank you to the product managers for their presentation today. We have 10 minutes left, so at this point we would like to open the floor to some Q&A. Salima, can you please open the phone lines?
As a reminder, if you would like to ask an audio question, simply press star, then the number 1. Again, to ask a question, please press star 1. And there are no questions at this time.
We must have questions with 120 people on the line. Any questions out there? No, so it doesn't seem like we have any questions. We would like to let you know that this session was recorded, and you can go back to the Nimsoft community, the user forum, where the replay will be posted, as well as a copy of the transcripts and the Q&A that was asked during the Q&A panel. We will be sure to post those as well. That concludes our presentation for today. If anyone has any additional questions, you can feel free to reach out to me, and we'll be sure to get them answered for you. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. This will conclude today's conference call. You may now disconnect your line.
Thank you.